for everybody to know that they are absolutely doing the best with whatever they know. It's one of the presuppositions of NLP. In life, there's no such thing as failure. I'd like people to delete that from their mind. There's no such thing as failure. There's only feedback. We're all a work in progress. I'd go, know why you're here on this planet. And if it changes tomorrow, I don't give a damn. One of the things why I believe I'm here, or one of my goals in life, is that I refer to it as the stage of life. I know that I've had my story up to where I am now. That's my movie. And I know that from this point forward, much as sometimes it's easy to blame other people in the past, this is my movie. I write the script. I direct the show. And I'm the lead in the movie of my life, and I can change the movie of my life.
Hello and welcome to the I Love Me Lab show. My name is Gail Buck, and I'm an NLP Master Life Coach, meditation instructor, and a seeker of happiness. And each week, we're going to bring you an inspiring person or message to help you discover additional ways of self-care, self-love, and becoming a healthier, happier you. So thanks for spending time with us today, and let's let the show begin. Good morning, everybody. And hey, do you guys ever have like a time where, especially like I come from a big family, and I'm visiting with family recently, and we'll talk about something that happened when we were growing up, and we all have a completely different memory of what happened and how we felt about it and the whole thing. Well, we're really lucky today because we have a guest today who's an expert in that whole space, and his name is Simon Gledhill. And I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, Gledhill?
You're pronouncing it correctly, yes. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you. And Simon is a master NLP practitioner or trainer, master NLP trainer, as well as hypnosis trainer, timeline therapy trainer. And he is one of my past trainers. So I know how not only knowledgeable and fantastic he is, but how much fun he was during the training process. So always keep that in mind when you're going to have instruction in anything. It's also got to be enjoyable. And Simon, thank you, because you were a blast. You had us laughing and learning at the same time, which I think made our learning deeper. Welcome.
Well, thank you for your kind words. It's something I actually a lot of my training style, my training delivery came from my mentorship, which I went through with. Some of you may have heard of Dr. Tad James, who was the first Master Trainer certified in NLP by Richard Bandler. And Tad always had a fun side. He knew his stuff. But he could make it fun. And so I just found when I was in his class, whether as a student or working as part of the team, that somehow the knowledge went in better. And even though many things in life are serious, if we can learn when we're having a bit of fun as well, somehow more goes in. So yeah, that does tend to be my approach. But thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I think also even though life can be serious, I think when you learn what you're going to share with us today on how we process things, it kind of helps us lighten up our interpretation of whatever might or might not have happened. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So you are right now. You live in Cape Town, South Africa.
I live in Cape Town, South Africa. I'm here right now. And next week I'm heading to the States. What day is it here today? Thursday. On Monday I leave to the States. So I'll be running a practitioner through in Houston for the Tad James company. And then after that, practitioner course, which is the basic level of certification in hypnosis, as you mentioned before, timeline therapy, NLP, and coaching. I'll be doing that in Puerto Rico. And then back home to South Africa.
Yeah, I know you're traveling all around the place from, every state that you can imagine in our country, as well as I know I've caught you in Mexico before. I mean, you've been a hard man to be able to get to spend this time with us. So I feel very fortunate and privileged that you're here today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize for being so difficult to pin down.
No. I'm grateful that you're here today. Yeah.
So thank you for your patience.
Yeah. So we had talked earlier, something that I think is super fascinating in NLP is the communication model. And you are such an expert in that space. And would you mind spending some time just talking about how it's good and important for us and valuable for us to understand that?
Okay. So I think first of all, the communication model in NLP, when I first got into my studies of NLP about 15 years ago, they teach you that on day one. and it's basically how does the mind work? Well, people think that many people just think they haven't done any studies of the mind, whatever neuro-based disciplines they may have studied, and so on. In NLP, we work very much with the concept that we have a conscious mind that processes everything rationally. And we have this thing that we refer to, just terminology, as an unconscious mind. So, what is the unconscious mind? I look at it this way. And when I was actually working with a group of students last night, I ran a seminar yesterday evening here in Cape Town. And I was talking about this. I'm saying, look, how do you, there are close on 8 billion people on the planet right now. If I look at the latest statistics, I think we're going to go over 8 billion in November this year. And here's the thing, there aren't two people on this planet who are the same. I mean, some people may disagree with me on that, saying somebody's been cloned, whatever, but really there aren't two people who are the same. And then I asked people, I said, how do you know everything that you know? How did all that information, all that knowledge get into your mind? Everything that you believe, everything that is important to you, all your memory, how did everything get into your mind, everything that you know? And you play around with it a little while, and because it wasn't that you were born and there's a little nice USB port in the back of your neck, which you can go, okay, I'm just going to plug this in and download everything I need to know about
Right.
life. Otherwise, we'd pass the math test, the first time, every time. But a reality is it comes into our mind. Everything that we know comes in through what we refer to as the five senses. It's what we see, it's what we hear, it's what we feel, and it's what we taste and what we smell. Now, there are various estimations on it, though. And I don't know how they measure this, but when I first started studying NLP 15 years ago, it was said that there are 4 million bits of information coming into our mind every second. Now, I never thought as a human being I'd be capable of that. I thought it was, how the heck do I deal with that? The latest research from Cambridge University in the UK and the Department of Neuroscience is that there are actually 15 million bits of information coming in per second. So I don't know how that works, and I don't know how they measure it, but whichever which way. Here's the thing, we cannot consciously process that. And then it's, okay, different people seeing the same event will have a different version of the same event. I hope that makes sense to everybody. So if I think back to when I was a kid and I'd go to a family event with my sisters would each have a different recollection of how everything went down to the one that I had, even though we'd all been at the same thing. So how does that happen? Well, there's a great book called Flow. Forgive me, right now I can't remember the author of it, but there's a book called Flow. If you have a look for it, you'll find a lot of what I'm talking about in there. And in the book Flow, it says out of those number of bits of information per second that are coming at us, we can actually only extract between 126 and 134. So the question that I have for everybody is, how do you determine which of the 124, 136 bits you're going to pull out of the potentially 15 million per second? Yeah, so that's where it becomes interesting in the model of communication. Because what happens in life, we go out there, something happens, we see something, or somebody says something to us. And it's just what we refer to as an external event. It then somehow comes through our mind, and we feel a certain way. In NLP, we refer to it as a state, but we have a certain feeling. We could feel angry. We could see maybe, for example, just pull something easy out. We see a mother smack her child in the supermarket. We see it, it runs through our filters. We decide we maybe feel angry because we think that's wrong, or we maybe feel glad because our thinking is that that's a good thing. The mother should have done it. But the thing here is that it comes in from the outside. The external event is happening, 15 million bits per second. We select 124, 136 that runs through our filters that are unique to every single person on the planet. And then we create what we call an internal representation, which is the picture that we see. It's the reality that we believe we have seen. From that, we then feel a certain way. It will reflect on our physiology, and it will determine what we do or what we don't do, what we say or what we don't say.
So
Which
I
then,
believe
Go on.
So I
Yeah,
believe we're going to get into the filters with you,
we are. Yeah.
but I'm just it's so interesting because I studied with you
Uh-huh.
and others, and it wasn't until this very moment that it became more than just information that was coming into my head about the 15 million bits of information that we only, because you and I, even in this conversation, we
Hmm.
are probably selecting 126 different bits of information from each other. Anybody listening, right, is
Yeah.
selecting out of those 15 million. We're all selecting different pieces and different combinations of pieces.
Exactly.
Starting from there, that's so interesting. It's like
Yeah.
right th
Exactly.
right off the batter's box. I mean, you're grabbing different information from whatever it was that happened, right?
Yeah. So the way it is, everybody and anybody who's watching this recording, they will all have a different version and a different takeaway to each other.
Mhm.
Nobody will have exactly the same experience of it. That's the way it
Yeah,
goes.
interesting.
That's the way it
Yes.
goes.
Yes.
If I just retrack, we have the external event happening, which is usually in the five senses: the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetic, olfactory, or gustatory. It comes in, goes through our filters. We then feel a certain way. Based on how we feel, we will then you'd see certain things in a person's physiology, basically body language and stuff like that. But what it'd go through to is the behavior. Behavior being, what do we do or what do we not do? What do we say or what don't we say? And I think important to keep in mind that even if we don't say something or we don't do anything, it is still a behavior. So a non-behavior is still a behavior. And whatever our behavior is, whether we go up and tackle the lady in the supermarket, or we snatch the child away, or we just choose to turn a blind eye because in our thinking we think it's not the right thing to interfere, then that will determine what the result is. Yeah, no, it's important to get this because I work with many people that come along, whether it's for coaching or they're looking to be coaches. And what are people looking for? They're ultimately looking for life to be different or to achieve results. And that can be
Mhm.
anything. It could be a result that's health-based. It could be a result in relationship with family. It could be a result that they want to increase their business or increase their salary, whatever it might be. And what many training courses do is they just go, well, you just have to change your behavior. In NLP, we go, well, if you just tell somebody to change their behavior, you're really just telling them to do something consciously. Yeah. So what we look to do in NLP, we look to make change, and hypnosis, we look to make change at the unconscious level. I'm sure, Gail, many of your listeners have gone through similar things. So forgive
Mhm.
me, everybody, if I'm repeating something. You think, okay, move on, Simon. I know all this already. But in NLP, what we look at doing is interrupting that loop. So when the information comes in, we acknowledge it goes through the filters of the unconscious mind. And if we change the filters, how the person feels is going to change
Hmm.
without even thinking about it. Yeah. And as a result, the behavior will be different and the result will be different. So really it makes the change easier.
Okay, and so I am positive that there are many people thinking about, okay, wait a minute, what are you talking about?
Uh-huh.
Filters.
Okay. So in talking about filters, this is where, when we teach, we put all the filters up and we teach you how to work with each of these filters. But giving you an overview of what the typical filters would be, we'd be looking at the unconscious mind. I look at it this way. It's like I can be running about my daily life and I know I've got to go to the stores, I've got to do this, I've got to check what time something's going on, I've got to check what time a meeting is. But really, I'm doing that. I've got my calendar. I follow through it. But then there's Simon. So who is Simon? How does Simon think? What makes me who I am? What makes you who you are, Gail? And everybody listening, who are you, and how did you come to be who
Mhm.
you are and think the way you are? Well, the reality is, if we look at something like, I'm just sidetracking away from the question. I'm going to come right back to it. If we
Mhm.
look, for example, at Maurice Massey's work on the stages of development, so between the ages of 0 and 7, we have the imprint period, during which we'll supposedly take on pretty much everything that we are told as being the truth. So we'll just accept it. If our parents tell us that winter is summer, we'll believe it. If our parents tell us that the only religion that is anything is whatever religion it is, we'll take it on as being the truth.
Right.
Following that, we have the modeling period, which typically kicks in between the ages of 7 and 13, where as little as kids or as wannabe adults, we start looking outside the family. And we'll meet the parents of our best friends, or we'll find a teacher at school that we really like, or maybe a character on TV who we kind of think, okay, I'd rather be like this person than or think the way that this person thinks than the way my parents think. So that's when we look outside, typically the parental area, and we start questioning. That's why teenagers can become a little bit troublesome.
Hmm.
One of the reasons. So that's the age. Sorry, that's the ages about 8 to 13. 8 to 13, we do the modeling. I maybe said that wrong earlier, but it's 8 to 13 we do the modeling, and then after the age of 13 we go into socialization. But back to the filters. I like to imagine it this way, and I know there's a whole lot of stuff about past lives and handed down knowledge, and that's a different subject. It is connected, but it's different. But if I imagine that if you imagine that when you're born, you don't really have that much in your mind. You don't know the periodic table. You don't know the alphabet. You don't know these things consciously, at least. You don't know them. So all this information comes in and it stores in your mind. So the filters that we would have, for example, all our memories of stuff. We'd hold all
Hmm.
our memories in there. We'd have our beliefs would be another filter. What we believe is right, what we believe is wrong, what we believe is good, what we believe is bad. We'd have our values stored in there. So values being that which is important to us, probably in the context of different areas of life or overall in life, what is important to us. We'd remember all the decisions that we'd made. And there's another thing in that language is in there, and also meta programs, which is possibly a different subject for a different day. But essentially, the external event happens and it runs through all our filters. So if I go back to the example of maybe the lady in the supermarket who happens to, give a child a quick smack, if we have a belief that parents should never smack their child, it's likely that we see that happen on the visual, or maybe we hear the smack as well. It goes through our filters, and we know it's wrong, and therefore we get angry. Somebody else could see it and could think, I'm glad that parent did that because their filters are such that they have a belief that there comes a point when you should smack a child. Now, if
Hmm.
anybody's making a judgment whether Simon thinks you should smack a child or Simon thinks you shouldn't, it's none of my business. People will think what they
Can I?
think.
Yeah, and I just wanted to interject something as well. Even the word, as anybody who is listening, the word smack, right, can have a
Okay.
different feeling and a different meaning for different people rather than a little spank or something like that, right? Or
Okay. So yeah,
disciplining your child. Yeah, so
yeah,
even filtering it down to a word, where smack for
uh-huh,
others might not mean anything at all. Yes.
yeah, exactly. So a main thing about this is so there are two things that are going on here. One, you've got 15 million bits coming at you per second. How do you know which of the 126 to 134 that you choose? Well, that will go down to it's a result of your filters, and it's also a result of what you're focusing on. It's also a result of
Mhm.
what's in your mind, what you're focusing on. So, an example I like to use, we have a street here in Cape Town called Long Street. And it's like the party street. It's for anybody who's been to South Africa, you'll know about the Dutch coming in and the English coming in. So, it's a beautiful looking street, probably a cross between New Orleans and an English street. And then it's got the occasional modern building in there. And it's become a bit of a party street. So people go out there, they'll hang around at coffee bars, at art galleries, at down and out dives. It's a, how do I say it? I guess cosmopolitan would be a little bit of a high end word for it, but it's very mixed, and to me it's a great fun place to go. But South Africa has its history. So there are many people here, typically from the older generation, who go, it should not have changed. It shouldn't have changed. We shouldn't have had the ANC coming in with Nelson Mandela heading the whole thing up, and everybody should have been kept apart. So if I
Hmm.
take somebody like that and I say, hey, why don't you just take a walk down Long Street and tell me how you experience it? So if I take somebody who's, let me say, negative about the future of South Africa, they'll probably come back to me. Well, and I've done this experiment a few times. So typically what I get back is they'll say to me, well, I see people drinking too much. I smell marijuana. I see mess on the streets and it's very noisy. And that shows me that this country is going down.
Mm.
Yeah, and that is their
Wow.
reality. But if you think about what they see is based on what they actually think, because their belief is already that South Africa is going down.
Hmm.
So they will then choose those 126 to 134 bits that match with their thinking. On the other
That
side, if I
support their
take,
thinking. Yeah.
yeah, and that's their reality. That becomes their reality, and it reinforces their belief that what they think is true. And then if I take somebody who's positive about South Africa and who's optimistic about the future of the country, they go down and they say, wow, it's amazing. There's people of different races hanging out together. They're having fun. Yeah, I can hear laughter. I see people deep in conversation. I see people who I wouldn't have expected standing by an art gallery and going in. And they'll go, this shows me that we have hope, that we have a future, that we can integrate all the crap that happened in the past.
Is
You
that
see,
beautiful? The contrast. I mean, it's like,
it's
wow.
it's really really beautiful, but who's right and who's wrong,
Right.
and whose reality is real? So what I'm saying here is really dependent on what your filters are through your experience of life will determine the world that you see. Now, and we can all do it. We can see, be the change you want to see in the world, and we see that on Facebook, and we put a blue tick. The reality is, few people do little more than put a blue tick. Or we can go change the way that you look at the world, and the world will change. And again, many
Mm.
people just put a little love heart or a smiley face, and then they make no change inside themselves. You see, here's the thing: the fastest and the quickest way to change the way that you see the world is actually to start doing some unconscious work and changing your filters. Because if you change your filters, you change what you believe, you change what you value, and you maybe look at certain events in your life a different way so that you're actually rewriting your story, then the world you see is going to change. But it sits around the
So you're
filters. I'm
saying
not saying
changing the
this.
way that you filter your experiences. So, for
Yeah,
example, can we
yeah.
dig into one of the filters, like values?
Oh,
Can
absolutely.
because
Yeah.
there's multiple filters, right? So let's dig into the values.
Yeah, we can dig into the values. So, values is probably one of the most important ones. It's probably the most unconscious of all of the filters that we have. But essentially, what's important to it, values are what is important to us. And they pretty much determine every single thing that we do, everything that we do in life.
Hmm.
Now, there are two different ways of looking. There are two different, let me say, schools of study when it comes to values. One is what's important to us in each area of our life. So we've got an unconscious ranking of what's important to us in separate areas of our life. For example, our health, or our career, or our self development, or family and friends, relationships, even spirituality. And then there's another area of values, which is how what is important to human beings has changed since the beginning of mankind. So which one I can do both of these. Would you like me to do a quick thing on
Well,
each of them?
let's dig into individual. And here's the thing with like the individual values. I find it so interesting, especially when you listen to political platforms and they'll talk about the values of this country. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
what are the values of this country? Why are you not, you're using the word values. Oftentimes you hear, well, because he doesn't have values. Which values? We don't all
Okay.
have the same values. So really laying those out, right? So I think values is a term that oftentimes gets very loosely used, right? Or somebody will say, honestly, people will always say, well, a top life value is family, but their life doesn't
Mhm.
really demonstrate that that's family, or their top
No.
value is their health, but they're
Yeah.
overweight and they're smoking, you know?
Yeah.
So when is there's a conflict there? Don't you're saying, oh, I really value health above all else. And it's like, but you're
Yeah.
smoking and you're eating all this sugar. And
Uh-huh.
so
Yeah.
when there's conflict like that, what can you Yeah, I don't know
Well,
if I was clear, but can you feed into
no,
that?
no, you're clear. So I'll give a couple of examples here, and where I'm not explaining enough, just I trust you just to ask me more questions because I want
Okay.
people to get this. Um, I'm going to take it from two angles. So first of all, we can have the values are running unconsciously, and they are what they are. But if you ask somebody what is important to them in life, here's the thing: they may give you what they wish their values were. They may give you the
Mhm.
aspirational values. So they could say, yeah, health is my number one. Yeah. So there's a difference between the what they'd like to be important to them, and what's important to us isn't necessarily what we like. So, for example, on I think it was Tuesday morning this week, even though many years ago I qualified as a cost and management and accountant, and I've done management consultancy and stuff like that in past lives, or actually in this life, um, I actually do not like administration. I don't enjoy it.
Mhm.
So Tuesday morning, I had a trip to the accountants. Luckily, I got everything right on the software. No, it's not something I enjoy. However, it is important to me in the context of business. Yeah. So values, if we go, right, what's important to you in the context of business, Simon? I'm going to say to you things like, um, I want to enjoy myself. Yeah. I want to challenge people. I want to be part of a great team. I want to work with like minded people. I want to make a difference out there in the world, whether it's working at a corporate level or the work I do down in the townships. I want to kick things up a gear. I want to have a growth plan in place for anybody who works with me or for me. I want to make sure students have success coming out of a course. These are the things that drive me. But unconsciously, they have a ranking. So, what is my number one? Yeah. What is my number two? What is my number three? My number four, five, six, seven? Now, typically, the first six are the ones that will dictate your life. Using it in the context of business. So, if any of your listeners, girl, have their own businesses, for example, what I often find is that when I discover somebody's values in the context of business, they often miss out money, for example, in the top six.
Mhm.
Now, we can have discussions about money, and I can go, money is really just energy and it's just an exchange of stuff. But often, if somebody doesn't have money in the top six, it is likely that their business won't be doing as well as it could do. Now, think about this, and also in the context of career, if somebody has money as their main value, the main thing that is important to them, that is going to guide all the decisions they make. So, what could that look like? It could look like somebody will sell something to somebody and they actually don't give a damn if that product or that service is suitable for the person because it's all about the
About
money.
money. Mhm.
It's all about the money. So it's like a buy or die kind of thinking. Whereas if somebody's got ecology, somebody's got quality product, somebody's got creating a great environment, and then or delivering a quality service, if those are the most important things. So then they think, yeah, I can work with this client, I can work with this company, da 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 da, and okay, let me think about the money now. Yep, the money's good. This can work or this needs tweaking. But you'd really want to have money definitely in the top three or four values. And I don't mind if you're an NGO or wherever you are, you need that. So when we look at values and we elicit or we discover what somebody's values are in an area of life, we could find that some of the values are not really in the unconscious mind, they're not in the order and sequence to support the results the client wants to achieve. It
So so if we take the values and we when does values, and I know you did give an example of, or it sounded to me like kind of when values can conflict a little bit, but
Okay.
if we were to dig into family or personal relationships, for example, or
Okay.
our own, health and well-being, when
Uh-huh.
can I think oftentimes it is our conflicting values that are not allowing us to get to where we wanna be or where we think we wanna be, and perhaps not even knowing really where it is that we want because there's all this conflict going on that we're not
Yeah.
even aware of. We're just not satisfied, right?
Yeah. So this, I'm going to come at this again from a couple of angles. So yesterday, when I was running a seminar last night, and somebody was telling me that his company, at some social media company, they've just been told what their company values are. Yeah. So the board
Yeah.
has got together, and they've come up with, these are our 7 values in order. Now, think about it. Working for that company, would it be, because there's 8 billion people with different thinking out there, how likely is it that everybody working in that organization supports those values?
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Right.
then you have a non-alignment. I'll give you a real life example of that. I do work with a big, the biggest medical insurer here in South Africa. They also run a program called Vitality, which is, I believe, through in the States, definitely in Europe, and definitely China. And there they post the company values all over the buildings. It's like in the elevator, you get in and the company values are there. It's like the customer first, it's professional, it's focused, it's all that stuff. And it all looks really great. Especially if you get in the elevator as a customer, you think, wow, it's great to be doing business with this company. And if you go in
Hmm.
there as an employee or potential employee, you think, wow, it's great. I want to be part of this. But how is it then? So then I was working with a group of the chronic care management team. Now, the chronic care management team, they're largely dealing with people who are in the late stages, like maybe stage 4 of cancer, or maybe on chronic medication for something like HIV, for example. So
Hmm.
where Discovery, which is a private company, recruits these people from, they recruit them typically with a nursing background. Yeah, and then they're working on the frontline support, be it in the hospitals or be it in the contact center. They're interacting with customers. Now, if you think about what led those people into career in nursing and healthcare, what's very high up in their values, what's important to them in life, is looking after people, caring for people, helping people. So they now come into the corporate world, and we've got to be real here. It's the world that we live in, right or wrong, makes no difference. But here they come into the corporate world, and the one value that's not written down when you get into the elevator is, we have to make money. And that we make
Hmm.
money by cutting cost, and we make money by selling more products. So let's take it to what often happens. You'll have somebody who used to be in the field of nursing, now working in the big head office through in Johannesburg, and they take a call from somebody whose child is sick. Yeah, and they go, look, I really need this, and I've heard there's this treatment through in the States and through in the UK that is available. Please, I need you to make an exception. Yeah, otherwise, I'm just going to be basic with you here. And this is quite normal. They say, otherwise, my child is not going to live. Okay, it's a real world
Hmm.
we're in.
Yeah.
And then the person there, with what's important to them from growing up and from working in the nursing profession, their desire, what's important to them is to help this person. Yeah. So it cuts into their values. So off they go to try and get an exception from one of the, um, what do we call these people? Not the accountants, the actuaries. They'll go to people who are trained in actuarial stuff, and they'll go, hey, look, I've got somebody on the phone who's looking for this. And they go, we need to make an exception. And then they'll go, well, according to the scheme, the plan that the person is on, and section 15.1a, this treatment has to be declined. Yeah, and then they go back on the phone, and they're telling the person, unfortunately, there's nothing I can do for you. This is declined, which sets up a conflict. You get it? It's because of what's important to them. So what's important to the company is clashing with what's important to the person who's doing the interaction with the customer, and is now then clashing with what's important to the client, to the customer. So the values are not aligned across the company, which creates a lot of conflict, leads to attrition, and so on. That's one example, but companies often go through the thing, we're going to set the values and everybody will fit in with them. And they miss some out and they make them look pretty. If we go into just flipping into another area of life and personal relationships. So when I was growing up, I'd hear things like, people like each other, people like themselves, like each other. You're attracted to somebody the same. So, and then other people would say opposites attract. What
Hmm.
my experience of it when I've worked in, I don't do a lot of it, but when I've worked in relationship counseling is when you get two people who what's important to them, what is important to them equaling values, what is important to them in in the context of relationship, when that is aligned, the two people are likely to stick together longer. Yeah. So
So, and this is really interesting. I'm actually, as we're speaking about the relationships now, I'm still kind of thinking about the business thing. So let's
yeah.
bounce back, and then we can bounce back if that's
Okay.
okay.
Cool.
So, because that's very true. And I can think of a lot of personal examples when exactly the example you're using, where I was not aligned with whatever the company I was working with, for
Yeah.
example, or vice versa. When I had my own company, I had people that were not
Uh-huh.
aligned. So, how do you get everybody aligned? How do you help them to make that happen so that everybody feels, I don't know if I want to say fulfilled, but I guess, yeah, I do. I want everybody feels good about what they're doing.
There are techniques that we can use to change people's unconscious ranking of the values. Though I'd say on the corporate side, you'd begin before that. Ideally, you'd be looking to be able to work out what people's values are in the context of career before you pull them into that working environment. Yeah,
Okay.
so that you don't have to do some restructure of the person's thinking when they get in. I mean, I'm working with a recruitment company actually in Puerto Rico at the moment, and it's run by two amazing people. They set the business up many years ago, but with what's happened in the world over the last couple of years, they're looking to recruit. A lot of the people coming through are between the ages of 18 and 25, and something that is important to them. So one of their high up values is flexibility and freedom.
Mhm.
Yeah, so they want to be able to work from home. They're not want What's important to them is flexibility in terms of working hours. Yeah, but
Mhm.
when they're going into work for a company that's, not the generation, the X or the generation Z, it's more like the baby boomers where I come from. I'm thinking, well, no, they should be there from like 8 till 5. They should be doing that. And that's important because that means they're doing a good job. So we've got you've got to recruit the people who are right for your business, and what's important to them matches what's important to you. And I think a lot of it's fascinating to work in the field of recruitment at the moment because what's important to people has shifted so massively over the last couple of years. The change is phenomenal. And many people are going, oh, it's people being lazy, it's people not wanting to commit, it's people not wanting that. Well, that's coming from your filters of life.
That's right.
What I'm experiencing here, and with one client I'm working with, it's actually a bank I'm working with in South Africa, is that since they've gone to the more flexible working arrangements, the actual productivity has increased. They can find people who are a better fit to the job. There's a couple of downsides to it, like creativity and so on, but we're now working to find other ways to bring people together to get over that. But the younger generation, I'm generalizing here, there are very different things that are important to them when it comes to career, to my generation and yours, girl, and the generations in between.
Yeah.
And we either adapt or we don't. But that's changing our thinking. So the recruitment part of it is really important.
Wow. Okay. So let's go back to then the relationship. So when you have a couple of people that meet and there's all this beautiful chemistry and whatever,
Yeah.
but maybe like I have a friend who her highest values, or so she says, and I believe she believes this, are honesty and integrity and, people
Yeah.
saying what the truth. And yet she stays in this relationship with this man who's married. And so the whole relationship is built on a lie,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
So that's a big conflict.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of when people are living in conflict with their values. So how do you work through that? Or how would you work with her?
Okay. Well. First of all, I'm gonna say let's take it back to the recruitment process. You've got to be careful who you
Mhm.
meet. So,
Yes. Yeah.
so you've got to be careful who you get involved with, and also to be aware that our values, what is important to us in any particular area of life, can change as we go through life. So
Mhm.
one thing I probably cut through a few things here, but when two people, I always find it interesting when somebody goes, "I love you," and the other person says back, "I love you too." So I've done this exercise with a room of up to, let's say, 80, 90 people. And what I do is I ask all those people to write down 3 words that to them are the meaning of love. Yeah?
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
And they take a couple of
Hmm.
minutes. And then I'll choose about 20 people in the room because I don't want to go around all 100. It takes too much time. But what people soon realize is that none of the 20 have written down the same 3 words.
Hmm.
Yeah, we don't all have Merriam-Webster's definition or the Oxford English Dictionary definition of the word. So, as Jimi Hendrix once said, the greatest illusion in communication is that it actually happened. So we think it's happened and we think we get it, but it actually hasn't. And even if somebody writes down a word like, well, my definition of love is honesty, integrity, fun. Yeah, if those are important to them in the context of a relationship, I could then ask the person, well, and they go, yeah. Honesty is important to both of us, so we're good to go. But the same way there are 3 definitions, there are many definitions of the word love. There are many definitions of the word honesty. Yeah. So interestingly, I worked with a couple. It's probably about 3 years ago, and the wife had gone off and had an affair. Okay, that's how it was. She'd gone off and had an affair. And when I went through their values, they both had honesty in the top 4 or 5. I can't remember. And
Hmm.
he said, well, look, this is where it was. You weren't honest with me. And she said, well, I was honest with you because I came home and told you. Yeah. And he's going, well,
Yeah.
no, that's you were deceitful. So it's how it all plays out. I think so this person, who's in a relationship with somebody, she's in a relationship with somebody who's married.
Hmm.
The thing is, what does she want? I mean, I can go, well, we could change the values around, you could do whatever, but here's the thing, maybe that's okay for her. Maybe there could be many things sitting around that. It could be other things like the emotions in the unconscious mind. Maybe she has a fear of commitment, or maybe high up in her values is a word like freedom. So being involved with somebody who's, to all intents and purposes, unavailable, she achieves the value of freedom in the context of relationship. I'm
Hmm.
not sure if that makes sense, but it
Yeah.
must
Actually, yes, it does. Yeah.
it must
Yeah.
satisfy something that's important to her. Or maybe she's been hurt in the past. Um, and as such, non-committing, getting involved with somebody who's not technically fully available is a safe space for her.
Hmm.
It gets. I'll always use real examples, and any real examples I use where I mention names, I do have the permission to speak about them. So one of the ones is that I talk about often is my sister Anne. She lives in the UK. She's 53 now. Let me know. I nearly aged her by a year. She's 53. And my sister was brought up in a family. My family is very kind of Victorian. So the male has the role and the female have their role.
Hmm.
So what was important, but if you think she grew up, she was born 1969. She grew up at a time with a strong family influence, saying what's important is that you grow up to be a person who will be a suitable partner for a guy who will look after you for the rest of his life. Yeah? Or your life. But on the other hand, she was going through an education system in the UK at that time, was saying what's important as a woman is that you stand up for yourself, that you can look after yourself, that you create your own life, that you can be better than men. Because everybody, if they're being honest with themselves, knows that women are the superior species. Yeah? But if you think about it then, what's important to Anne in the context of life is, well, one, she can become her own person, or two, she goes into what is a more typical relationship. Now, she went for both. So she worked in the family business, worked for my father, and there's all kinds of stuff going on right now, but they'd pay the women less than the men, for example. Shock horror, we know it still happens. But then, so she pushed herself in the business context. But then, with this thinking of what's important in the context of relationship, unconsciously, she took on that from my mother, which is you be subservient to the male. Yeah,
Hmm.
and you play this role. So, female emancipation and women's rights, what did it do for women? In my opinion, and I generalize hugely here, the guys used to go out and do the work. The women used to look after the kids and make sure the house was fine. When women got the freedom to progress up in the working environment, they did that, but they didn't let go of looking after the kids and keeping the house clean and bringing the kids up.
Right.
So women got 4 jobs while guys stayed with one. So my
Right.
sister attracted to her in the relationship context guys who were similar to my father. Okay. So where in the home relationship, she could be subservient and doing everything. Because unconsciously in her mind, that's her belief as to how it should be. And that's what's important to her as a wife, as a mother. Now,
Right.
one thing she didn't, my father wasn't, but she started pulling towards her men. Let me put it this way. She ended up in 4 relationships which finished up with a lot of physical abuse. Yeah, emotional
Mm.
and physical abuse. Now, from a values concept, it was important for her to be loyal. It was important for her to play the role of this. It was important to do that. But then, when it crossed over to the other values, if you think getting involved with a guy who believes a woman should have her place, you've also got this other part of my sister Anne that is pushing and is getting elected onto the UK National Textile Council. That starts going against his values as to how he thinks a woman should be in a relationship. Yeah, and it ended up
Right.
in a whole pile of physical abuse and not cool stuff. I mean, my sister did a lot of work on herself. She was one of those people who, after a period of time, at the age of 30, she was saying all men are bastards. That became a reality in her world. The thing was, until she changed what was important to her in the context of a relationship, and that she recognized that she was worthy of a great relationship, only then did she start attracting a different type of person towards herself. But that was through doing self inner work and shifting around her filters, changing her beliefs as to what a relationship should be, changing her values as to what is important in a relationship. And I go
Simon,
so
that is
far
an
as,
absolutely beautiful example, actually. It
yeah.
makes it very clear. Yeah.
So
So,
before, the guys who she attracted who were more on the abusive side, and I'm not saying successful guys equals abusive guys, please. If you hear that, you're not hearing
no,
the
no,
right
no.
thing. But she tended to attract guys who were successful, who were powerful, and so on. Yeah. So when she was looking for a relationship and she was looking for a partner, she'd go, okay, are they successful? Yeah. Do they have a good life? Is there this? But high up in the values of the person she was looking for wasn't, will they care for me? Will they support me? Will they back me up? Okay. So she more looked for the
Wow.
things in the other person that my father had unconsciously got her to look for. And my younger sister did the same. It's said that 90% of our thinking is not our own. We take it on from our parents, from school, from the TV, from what movies we watch. Nowadays, it's from what TikToks, what Instagrams we watch. But have it as a basis that 90% of our thinking is not our own. I think Vishen Lakhiani describes it really nicely. He wrote the book, The Buddha and the Badass. He says that we prescribe a lot of rules, and a lot of the thinking that we have is actually not relevant, and 90% of it was created by people who are now dead and is not relevant in the world we live in today. That's probably a bit harsh and a bit out there, but I guess he's got a point. So
Wow.
I don't
Wow.
know if I'm
So,
confusing everybody here or we're getting somewhere. I'm not sure.
actually, you're giving me tremendous clarity. So, I'm hoping that that's the same for others. So, my question would be for people that really have not explored, inner work and understanding who they are. So maybe they're in a relationship kind of like what you're describing, which I think is very common.
Uh-huh.
Like your sister, for example, these conflicting values, right?
Yeah.
And they're listening right now. Maybe it's a little bit confusing. I mean, what would be a good how could they start sorting that out? Or maybe even just understanding, even just from listening to this, just understanding that if you are not happy where you are, this could be how big of a role could this be playing that
Okay.
you're living in conflict with your
It can
values?
be playing a massive role. So, there's all that thing when you meet somebody that, like you mentioned earlier, the whole chemistry thing kicks off. There's the initial attraction,
Mhm.
there's all that stuff. But, and that's the time when you don't care if somebody leaves the towel on the bathroom floor or what they do. You forgive them because the power of the love and the chemistry and the hormones, it all kicks in. It's all amazing.
They're just so amazing right
They're
now.
just so amazing. They can walk on water. It's
That's
absolutely heaven. But
right.
then after a while, other stuff kicks in, and you start getting to
Yeah.
see, the rose-colored glasses come off, and after a while, different stuff, and you get to know the person some more. But if people have it's probably easier to do this in the context within a relationship in something like the context of career. Actually, no. Let me think about the easiest way to explain this. Okay, no, let's keep in the context of relationship. And I'm gonna give an example of this. I worked with somebody. It's a late. She came along to my seminar last night, and she's called Renee, and she's an advocate here in Cape Town. And when she came along and did the practitioner course, she'd been in a number of relationships for maybe 1 or 2 years, but nothing really of any significance
Mhm.
to her. Now, there was stuff that we cleared up that had happened to her when she was younger in life. There was a lot of fear, there was a lot of anger and things around that. That's whatever it is. But what was important to her, when I asked her about a relationship and what was important to her in the context of a relationship, freedom came in at number three. Yeah. Now,
Mhm.
if you really think about that word, and it depends on your definition of it, freedom, I hope everybody can get how if you have freedom high up in your values with regard to a relationship, that suggests or could suggest, and you've got to ask what the person's definition of the word is. It means that person should be able to do whatever they want to do. So, how did that come out in a relationship? Renee would be dating somebody, and they'd call and go, "Hey, honey, remember we're meeting for a drink after we finish work today at 6 o'clock?" And Renee go, "Well, actually, I've just met somebody. I've decided to go for dinner with them. I'll see you. I'll see you later at home."
Yeah.
Yeah, because and that's okay because in her world freedom is super important, and that's how she do it. It's like, I'm free to do whatever I want when I want. But if the other person's values are that this person will be there to support me, will be have integrity, will be on time, will be committed, that goes against their values. I mean, if you have two people together who both have freedom pretty high up, then we got a good match. Who's to say that freedom is wrong? Yeah. But if we have somebody else and freedom isn't high up in their values, we're likely to have a clash.
Wow. So it almost seems like, I guess really understanding your own values, but then also being conscious and aware in conversations. And
Yeah.
let's talk about relationship with your partner, understanding their values as well. It
Yeah.
makes it better, but it's also feels so complicated. Is it?
It's not actually as complicated as it seems. I'll just give you a basic outline. If I was working with couples on this, what I'd do is run an individual session with each of them. And part of that session would be discovering what their values are in the context of a relationship. Yeah. So if I was working with you, Gail, and your partner, I'd find out what your values are in the context of relationship. And then I'd find
Mhm.
out what your husband's values are in the context of a relationship. I'd then look at those values and I go, okay, where have we possibly got conflict here?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's going to give me possible conflict points, or it could give me points where you've got values that are maybe working against each other, even within your own individual values. So you could have, I want this person to be there for me all the time, and yet I want freedom. Yeah, those two values could be in conflict with each other within your
Right.
own individual values. Like somebody who in their business values says, "Well, I want my own business," and in there, what's important to me is freedom, and what's important to me is structure. Freedom and structure could be conflicting values. So I'd work on each person's values individually to check if there are any ones that conflict that can possibly railroad that person's life for themselves. And then I'd work with the other person the same way. And then I'd look for where there are values that could create conflict within that relationship. Another one could be high up in somebody's relationship values, could be spontaneity. Somebody else may not have spontaneity in there. Somebody could have um, physical, like sex, up at number 4. For somebody else in the relationship, sex may have gone down to number 10 or dropped down to number 199. Yeah, so
Hmm.
that can often be one. And then when we're working on relationships, we'd always also elicit a person's values in the context of sex. And I
Ah.
know it's that subject that we go, oh, I grew up in the time when you don't talk about sex, but it's a real
Oh no,
thing.
I
And
had as a previous guest a doctor who she's a sexologist now. She's amazing. So
okay,
we talk about sex here. Yes.
okay, cool. So it's yeah,
Yeah.
so we can go right. Well, basically, somebody might be quite adventurous and want the cat ears on, and somebody else may be a little bit more missionary. So there, within that, we'd have different values, which would lead to conflict.
Right.
And then
Right.
I'd bring the two people together and we'd do some negotiation, some unpacking of the values. There's other work we do because there can be certain things that after a while in a relationship, they become triggers that annoy you, like leaving the bathroom towel on the floor. These are quick cleanups. But if the values are aligned, we've got a good chance of working that out. And we can
And
move
if
them
they're
around.
not, I think I'm sorry I interrupted you, but if they're
No, it's
not
cool.
aligned, yeah, then actually becoming aware and maybe even just becoming aware of the different values gives you a better understanding, right? So the conversations can start there or a realignment can start there.
Yeah, we can realize, I mean, they could be so far off track that there may be no realignment. Yeah, they may go, actually, no, this is not going to work. And then people either decide to stay together or have the relationship on a different basis or move on. Because the
Right.
values that they have today may not be the values they had when they met each other. We change as we go through life. What's important to us changes. But usually we'd go for, there can be some negotiation on this. We can move stuff around and we can get each person to look at it a different way. So yeah, you can make it happen, but it's essentially, I think that a lot of people, if they're running with the belief in their mind that a relationship should stay together forever, the whole till death do us part, accept that the person that you marry or become involved with after 10 years, a lot of their thinking will be very different, and it may be different to yours.
Hmm.
It's part of life. I know I've changed my thinking many times. I'm probably on midlife crisis number 5 now. Bring it on, number 6.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. And
Yeah,
I'm
but
one of
what's
those
important
freedom
to me is
girls that you
different.
were talking about a little bit ago too. So that conflicts with other things, I suppose,
Yeah,
but
I mean, if I look back to when I first started my own business about 22 years ago here in South Africa, what was important to me when I first started, I was funding out of credit cards and bits of savings and so on. So what was important to me was to get clients. That was it. Money was pretty high up there because if I didn't pull the money in, I wouldn't have somewhere to live. Where would the car and how would I eat? So then I'd say I was always focused on quality. That's been a thing that I took on actually took the focus on quality from my father, who works in the textile business, and he produces the highest quality cashmere in Europe. So that I go, okay, it's not my thinking, it came from family. But I like that one. That one I'm okay to hold on to. I'll adopt that. That's important to me. It's cool. But my second one probably was money. Yeah. Why? Because I've got to eat, because I need a place to live. Now that's back when I was probably around about the age of 30, when I 30, 31, when I first came to South Africa. Now I have clients coming to me who go, so I've got a bit of a good reputation working in many industries down here. So I had a company approach me a few months ago, and it's a company that basically they do catalog sales, internet sales, and so on, and they'll sell products for your house, whether it's curtains, whether it's bed linen, whether it's towels, whether it's microwaves, you name it, it's on there. And they're a very, very successful company. Yeah, their stocks, the whole thing, the value goes up every year. They have a very good business model. And they've asked me to go in and do sales training for their teams who are working on online chat and interaction with customers. Now, when I looked, they've asked me to go, it's the last 5 years, they keep asking me to go in. If that company had come to me 20 years ago, 26 years ago, I would have taken that business on. Yeah, they didn't. If they come to me now, like when they came a few months ago, I won't take that business on. Why? I'll tell you why. The market that the company appeals to, we have around about 40% of people in South Africa, due to history, who don't have a high degree of literacy. and certainly don't understand things like finance, budget, interest rates, and so on. But they see the microwave and they want the microwave. And the way the company does it is by charging extremely high interest rates. Yeah, that's how they make their money. So it's essentially a credit-based business. But what I see there is people buying a microwave for 1,000 rand, just translating that for you, that's about 70 USD at today's exchange rate. But the terms that they sign up for will have them paying around about $300 for that microwave. And people get themselves into all kinds of crap over that. And then there's the whole repossession, the sheriff gets called in and so on. So that goes against their business model, goes against what's important to me in the context of business. So my values as a trainer, as a coach, if I'm going to coach their people, it's not aligned with their business model because money's really high up. And in my mind, I won't mention the name of the company, but money is so high, they don't give a damn about the effect on the people who they're actually making their money from. That doesn't work for me. But important to say, I'm human. 27 years ago, if they'd asked me, I'd have done the work. But what's important to me in business has changed because life moves on. Now I'm in a different situation. I can turn business down. Yeah.
So I could talk for hours and hours with you, and I know that I've taken you past our time, but is there a really quick thing that if somebody were to think about, wow, I want to really think about what my values are, is there a self-exercise that you could rec that somebody could start with in
I
determining what their values are?
I like to do it this way. And any of you who've been on a Tony Robbins seminar, you'll have seen things like the Wheel of Life, where we put all the areas of life in a kind of pie chart.
Mm-hmm.
If and Tony Robbins seminars, you can have like 20, 30 different areas of life. I tend to keep it really simple, especially when I'm starting off working with people. So I'll look at somebody's health, because without health, we don't have much. I'll look at their relationships with significant other. I'll look at relationships with family and friends. I'll always look at personal development because I have a belief everybody should be growing. You have a kind of duty to grow to yourself and to the world that we live in. And spirituality, and there's one more, career. Career should be in there. And I go draw that out, give yourself a pie chart, separate it into 6, and in the middle put 0%. Yeah. And on the outside of the circle, it's going to be 100%. And then draw in, I'm going to do something quick and dirty here, Gail, if that's okay. And I'm not very good at drawing circles. But if you chose...
Now we are on, this is video on YouTube, but otherwise it's just audio for people, just so you know.
Oh, okay.
But you're drawing the pie chart, yes.
Create yourself a pie chart with like 6 segments, have 0% in the middle, and then draw 100% on the outside. So in the segment that is career, draw a line that shows where are you up to in career, and be honest with yourselves. Am I at 0% of where I should be, or am I performing at 100%? And then put those lines across and you'll have a wheel. And you'll notice probably that one area of your life, maybe you ain't doing too well in. Yeah, so at the moment, mine is due to some conflict between my sisters and my father. When I did this for myself yesterday, family, I probably rated it around about 25%. So then I go, right, let me look at family. Let me focus on this area. And why it's at 20% is because what is important to me, what I value in the context of family relationships is not being met. And then I've got a choice. I can either go, it's all my family's fault, I didn't do it, they made it happen, or I can go, how can I change my thinking that will more go in line with supporting me moving that 20%? I would like to say to 100%. I haven't really worked with many families who are 100%. But how can I make that better? And that may mean changing some of my thinking. If I change my thinking, I'll change what I see, I'll change what I experience, and I'll probably become a lot more resourceful. And also, I'll start looking at what my family's values are, what's important to them, so we can perhaps align some more. Yeah, it's that. And I mean, just, I teach this stuff. I've been a Master Trainer of NLP now. I'm probably one of 25 in the world, and learned from Tad and some other great people out there. it's a new girl yourself. I know you do so much work on yourself and so many courses. I have massive admiration for everything that you do and that you've done and that you continue to do. You recognize it's a journey, and sometimes people can think, oh well, they must have their life all sorted out. I can tell everybody
No.
last week I flew to the UK, where I was in a family mediation session with a mediator. We got up from London for 2 days, and a question she asked, I mean, this is a professional mediator. I do know she studied NLP about 10 years ago, but it was interesting because one of the first questions she asked, there was my father, who's 81, there was my two sisters and myself. She said to us, she said, give me 3 words that are important to you in the context of family. And we each came up with our 3 words. And then she said, what's important about those 3 words? And what she was, the beginning part of the mediation, to which is at the moment a pretty horrible situation, what I realized she did was she actually elicited our values in the context of family. That was the starting point of the mediation. Um,
Wow.
I don't know if I answered your question there. It's a big long
You
subject.
did. You did. No, that was beautiful. That was beautiful. Simon, will you come back like soon? I know it was so hard to get you on this call, but would you come back soon? Because I feel like we're just at the beginning of a conversation
No, I'd
and
love to.
there's
I'd
so
love to.
much.
And it's quite a big subject. Next time, let's choose a smaller one. And then, if anybody's logged off halfway through, you didn't hear this last part of it, but for those of you who stayed, thank you so much.
No, it's actually quite brilliant. And we just touched the really tip of it, which is what's so interesting, right? So
Yeah, it is. I think in summary, Gail, we have what's important to us in life. It's important to go right, step back and do the evaluation. Again, I'm thinking of somebody who I'm seeing this afternoon. He's somebody I was coaching a while ago. He's head of forensics for the police force here in Cape Town. And what was really important to him in life was that he's kept saying to me, Simon, I have to finish my degree. I have to finish my degree, his second degree. And then when I asked him, why do you have to finish it? He went, well, because my parents are expecting it. And when I asked him the question, well, do you want to finish it? He kind of looked confused. And at that
mm,
point, he realized that he was operating it wasn't something that was important to him anymore. It was something that was important to other people, yet he was almost in the hamster wheel of finishing it off. Yeah, so we can be running with other people's values which don't support us because we've just taken them on. We think it's the right thing to do or to make somebody else happy. So my question is to get the truth from people, not to have some aspirational about like what is important to you. Because it will determine whether you turn left or right out of your front door every day. It'll determine whether when you're at work and you're focused on a project, I don't know, if you get that call coming in saying, hey, booty call in half an hour, what's more important to you at that time? What's of more value? Is it to go for the booty call or is it to finish your project? Because what is more important to you, what is more value to you, will ultimately determine everything you do in life.
so my final question for you was going to be, and I guess still is, because this is the I Love Me Lab podcast. If you were to give one piece of a wisdom nugget to any listeners on a way that they can show themselves more self-love and self-care, what would that be? And maybe you just did that, but what would that be?
I'd say a first thing is, and this is maybe so overused, and it's just for everybody to know that they are absolutely doing the best with whatever they know. It's one of the presuppositions of NLP. In life, there's no such thing as failure. I'd like people to delete that from their mind. There's no such thing as failure. There's only feedback. We're all a work in progress. I'd go, know why you're here on this planet. And if it changes tomorrow, I don't give a damn. One of the things why I believe I'm here, or one of my goals in life, is that I refer to it as the stage of life. I know that I've had my story up to where I am now. That's my movie. And I know that from this point forward, much as sometimes it's easy to blame other people in the past, this is my movie. I write the script, I direct the show, and I'm the lead in the movie of my life, and I can change the movie of my life. But one thing I want to know is that when I exit stage left, of this game or the show called life, even if there's a next life. In my heart, in my mind, as Simon, I want to know that I gave more to the planet than I took from it.
Mm.
So I'd go know yourself, know what you want, and take responsibility for yourself. Like the day you can kick away holding everybody else responsible, most of whom are probably long since gone, and go, I'm going to write a great sequel. It's going to be good. It's going to be cool. And if I have to change to achieve the things that I want in life, the things that I want to experience in life, then do whatever it takes. Or don't. I mean, that's the beauty of life. You have a choice. Just be open to change. Be open to not just putting a blue tick on Facebook. Be open to doing stuff differently, because another line you can blue tick. If we do what we've always done, we'll have the same. If we do something different, we'll create something different. But here's the thing. To do something different, we've got to first of all think something different. So if you want to be the change that you want to see in the world, and if you want to see the world differently and look at it differently, well, you've got to actually start doing that and stop just using emojis and get down and dirty and be real with yourself. Stop trying to be, just be. That's really it. If that's cool with you,
Simon, that was brilliant. Thank you so much. If anybody wants to reach out to Simon, what is the best way to contact you?
The best way is on email, Gail. It'd be Simon at connect, CONNECT, and then the number 2, and then NLP, N for November, L for Lima, P for Papa.com. Next time I'm launching
Simon
a new
at
website.
connect2nlp.com. Yes.
That's right. That's it. You got it.
And we will have that in the show notes. And if you lose that, you can always reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to put you in contact with Simon. Okay. And for all of you listening and, staying through the whole thing, thank you so much. I thought it was brilliant. I don't even want to leave. But Simon did commit and promise that he's going to be here again. So we're going to get him back to continue this conversation and hopefully to dig into even more things in the future. Thanks so much for listening to this conversation. If you enjoyed it and want more information on our guests and resources, please visit ilovemelab.com. And please, if you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe and share with a friend. Hey, there's more great episodes to come. So until next time.